Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up, and make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video, and yeah, let's begin. Okay, so we are picking back up with Swords of X, and in this one we're covering part 4, which features X-Force, which is just kind of a continuation of the video, the last video that we did, where we were talking about Wolverine, right? And in the last video, Wolverine was on the hunt for Muramasa, right? He was traveling around, he spent about 24 hours doing it, trying to find this guy, because it was his task to locate and use the Muramasa blade as part of the Swords of X event. The thing about this is that everybody that he talked to had basically told him that Muramasa had essentially become a servant of the hand, which was kind of something that Wolverine just couldn't really get behind, right? Because Muramasa never really seemed to be the kind of person that would serve the hand, but ultimately locating this Yomi temple that celebrated the underworld, he ended up finding that Muramasa had kind of been sacrificed in this sort of ritual sacrifice that had basically taken him to the hand, or at least been done by the hand. And that's when Wolverine's completely and totally ambushed, right? Now, the thing about the hand, and we've talked about this before, because they usually attack in massive droves, right? They attack in just a huge, overwhelming number, basically means that anybody they go against isn't really going to have much of a chance to defeat them. Now, with regards to facing off against Wolverine, they can hold their own more than enough, right? Because they're here to achieve a particular goal. Now, when Wolverine rips the mask off one of the members of the hand, they don't look the way they used to, in the sense that the hand always looked like people, because they effectively were people. But the idea is that Wolverine's basically taken by the hand themselves once he's stabbed and thrown through a kind of portal that leads directly to what is essentially hell. Now, hell in Marvel Comics, and we've talked about this before, hell in Marvel Comics is kind of like is a geographical place, right? And you can kind of split it up based on different territories, right? And so if we use the United States as an example, which is not that far-fetched, and we said the United States is hell, then in turn what we could do is we could say like California is ruled by Mephisto, and Washington DC is ruled by Damon Hellstrom, and Florida is ruled by somebody else, right? That is all kind of broken up into these different sections. Marvel's never really consolidated this. They've never really answered the question like what stops the soul in the realm of Mephisto from wandering into the soul of Damon Hellstrom, and how does this kind of unification and splitting of factions among hell work, right? And Marvel never really clarified that. They kind of have a little bit to a degree here and there, but by and large we don't really have a kind of like map in terms of how hell is laid out and how this determining factor on who rules what section, how it's all kind of solidified. But the long and short of this is that this is how Wolverine ended up in hell and basically clawed himself out when he was moving, and just was nothing more than an adamantium skeleton. Now, one of you guys asked the question how it is that Wolverine can move when he's only a skeleton. Comic book logic, guys, because you're not wrong, right? You're not wrong if you say that doesn't make any sense. No person who's just simply a skeleton could move, because there's no muscle, no nerves, none of that stuff, none of the components that the body needs in order to be able to move, right? I mean, your muscles push and pull, and that's how you move, and move one leg in front of the other, right? In order to walk in a forward direction. Without that, you can't move. You would just be laying there, right? So comic book logic, just kind of take it for what it is. But that's when he's kind of set upon the hand as they kind of exist here, right? As they exist in this sort of new realm. He's met by basically demons and so on, and all the while you have Muramasa crafting swords for the Beast. Now, the Beast is a character that the hand basically worship, and the Beast is largely responsible for the hand's mystical abilities, right? The ability to resurrect the dead, different things like that. But the funny thing about it is that the Beast's location, which is to say the dimension in which he resides, had never been fully fleshed out in Marvel Comics. And the fact that this is in hell really basically shows us the Beast is one of the hell lords that are out there, right? He's one of these demonic entities that resides in the realm of hell and presumably has his own little location. Now, we don't really know anything about it, but whatever the situation is, Muramasa has been brought here because he is viewed as being owed a debt to the Beast. And the reason for that comes in the nature of Muramasa, in the sense that when he's crafting a weapon, he's the greatest craftsman in all on all of Earth, right? He's the greatest weapons maker on Earth itself. But one of the things that makes him so interesting is that he can actually take a portion or all of your soul and put it inside the weapon he creates. And what this has been viewed as by the Beast and presumably other demonic entities is that he robbed them of souls, right? Beings who maybe like they made some kind of a pact with Mephisto, and Mephisto would take their soul when they die, but instead they end up having their soul placed inside the Muramasa blade. Their physical body will die, but their soul will kind of exist inside this blade, and they'll never actually go to the realm of Mephisto, right? So he was kind of cheated out of a bargain, so to speak. Where Muramasa doesn't really ask too many questions. He doesn't really have a checklist, right? Like, okay, please check off the demon entities whose soul you owe. It doesn't really work that way. And so he doesn't really know, but the result of this is that he's being viewed as owing a debt, and that's why he's currently a servant of the Beast, because the Beast is making good on the debt that he feels he's owed. Now for Wolverine himself, he's basically thrown inside of one of the cells in hell, and when that happens, his body of course kind of starts, regrowing, his bones, and or at least his skeleton and muscles and all that kind of stuff kind of starts going through that whole process. But he's met with the arrival of Solem. Now Solem, of course, as most of you guys remember, we saw in the last video, and this was a guy who was contacted by the Horsemen War and basically told, you have to go and grab one of the Muramasa blades, or a blade from Muramasa, in order to satisfy your role as one of the people who are going to be fighting against the heroes of Krakoa, right, as part of this Extra Swords event. And so he basically ends up kind of going on his journey and traveling and getting to that location. Now how it was that he actually got here to hell is kind of given to us in a bit of a flashback, in the sense that he kind of tells Wolverine while his body's restructuring, he basically tells Wolverine that at some point along the line, once he left the island of really the land of Araco, he ended up traveling and see the Oracle of Araco, and the Oracle had been placed there, or kind of banished there, by her sister, and the result was that Solomon had essentially cut this girl's head off and then brought it to the Oracle and was like, here's the payment that I offer as tribute for this kind of prophecy, this direction that I need to go in, right? Because it requires some kind of tribute in order for you to get information from the Oracle. And so the Oracle basically tells him, like, you are going to have to travel to the realm of hell, and you have the tools you need to do it, right? That Muramasa is currently dead. You cannot go and find him on Earth, but what you have in your possession, this hell blade that you possess, is a key. It will allow you to access hell, but know that when you go there, you're not going to be able to find Muramasa on your own. Instead, you're going to have to seek out the man made of metal, and he will be your guide to Muramasa. Hence the reason why Solem's here, because he needs Wolverine in order to find Muramasa. And so the funny thing is that once Wolverine emerges, once he kind of pops back and he's totally healed, he uses his adamantium and tries to cut through the Hellforge bars, and it doesn't work. And this is one of only a handful of instances in Marvel Comics when we're basically given a material that's stronger than adamantium, right? By and large, adamantium is the strongest material in Marvel Comics, right? There are a couple things out there that might be stronger than adamantium, something like Thor's hammer, but even within the Marvel universe, nothing can really cut through adamantium, or at least only one thing can really cut through adamantium. But it is essentially highly durable. It can't really be destroyed. When it starts out in a liquid state, once it hardens and solidifies, it can't be returned back to a liquid state again. There are different kind of weaknesses out there, something like anti-metal, right? So if you had like an anti-metal blade, it could cut through adamantium, not in the traditional sense, but because anti-metal breaks down metal on the atomic level. So it's almost kind of like you're cutting through it without actually touching it, if that makes any sense. But, this is one of these instances where we've encountered yet something else in Marvel that's stronger than adamantium. And so what you end up getting is this attempt by Wolverine to kind of take out Solem, right? Because if the stance of Solem is, I'm here to get the Muramasa blade, and Wolverine's here for the same thing, then ultimately they would end up fighting over the sword, right? So Wolverine's like, I'll just kill you now, and I won't have to worry about it later. But when he goes to attack Solem, we end up finding the reason why Solem is kind of considered to be this indestructible man is because his skin is actually made of adamantium. But at the moment, he and Wolverine effectively have to work together, right? Wolverine can't kill him, and he needs Wolverine. And so with that happening, they basically set off into the Hellforge itself, right? Into the realm of the Beast. And once they locate him, there's this kind of ceremony taking place, right? This marriage between what he calls his red left hand and his red right hand, right? Seemingly his two most devoted servants. And so as this marriage is taking place, this is why these swords of Muramasa were being created, right? They were being done for the purpose of honoring this kind of ritual. Not only that, he put the entirety of his soul into these swords, right? He says, for you, I put my very soul into them, right? And so what this does is it leads to, as part of this ritual, it leads to the Beast basically instructing his servants to kill Muramasa, and then to basically absorb his soul into the swords themselves. Now, whether or not this means Muramasa can come back, we don't really know, right? It may be one of these things where the soul is stuck inside the swords and we'll never see it again, right? Muramasa is dead for all time. We're not entirely sure here, but what we do know is that with his soul being absorbed into the swords, it makes them wildly powerful, in the sense that when you have Solem launching his attack and destroying one of the red hands, that this leads to the other one attacking him. And in doing so, he starts to bleed. And that's when the revelation is given to him on behalf of Wolverine. The Muramasa blades can cut through adamantium. That's their purpose. But the original Muramasa blade was created, or at least done by Wolverine, with a portion of his soul placed inside, so that the sword itself could cut through Wolverine's adamantium and behead him if it needed to be done. And so with that being the case, all blades coming after have the ability to cut through adamantium, right? So it's basically a means by which Wolverine and Solem can kill each other. Because the question leading up to this was that if these two are going to end up doing battle, Solem's skin is made of adamantium and Wolverine's bones are made of adamantium, how could they ever really kill each other, right? They would just fight for all eternity. But the fact that they're blades that are able to cut through this material means they can kill each other. And that's where the question's kind of asked, that the Beast is killed pretty quickly, which is a little disappointing, but the question that's asked by Solem is, why should I give you this sword? Why do that? I have both katanas. I killed both the bride and the groom. I could just take them for myself. But it's the nature of the X of Swords event that Wolverine needs a sword and that Solem needs a sword. And seemingly, Solem is a person who is very much honor bound, right? He believes that if they are going to fight each other, they're going to duel in the most honorable way possible. And so what he tells Wolverine is, I will give you this sword, but I want a deal. I want something in return. What this thing is, we don't know. Instead, all we end up getting next is Wolverine emerging, into Krakoa, bringing his sword with him, simply saying that he got his sword, but it came with a price, and then taking his place on the altar as one of the heroes who have attained their swords from the X of Sword event. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like. I will catch you all later. Peace.